To Wagging Wellness, everybody. Do feel free to introduce yourselves into the chat box at the bottom there. Say hello to us all and introduce us to your pooches as well. So let's get kick-started. So my name is Rachel and I'll be your host today. I'm one of the in-house vet nurses here at Butternut Box and have been part of the team now for 3.5 years. I've been a registered veterinary nurse here as well for sort of 12 years, and I love nothing more than supporting our customers and their pooches here at Butternut Box. Our vet nurse team is also made up of a team of 4, and today I'll also be joined by Anna, Leah, and Lucy, who are also veterinary nurses here at Butternut. If you ever do book an appointment or email through, it'll be one of us here today who will support you and your pooch. Between us, we have years of knowledge and experience that we have all gained from working in a broad range of practices. We are all dog lovers as well, and we do all have our own, pack of dogs at home as well. It is important to know though as well that we are all qualified registered veterinary nurses and we are not canine behaviouralists. However, when we did undertake all of our training and qualifications, we have undergone training in behaviour. Okay. So, moving on, what are we going to be covering today? So, we will begin by looking at understanding canine body language and how we can build better bonds. We'll get kick-started with thinking about body language and how to actually read your dog. From there, we'll deep dive into behaviour and look at the good, the bad, and the hungry. And finally, we'll look into canine social cues and how we can support our pooch's emotional syncs. So we will do a few polls along the way and we'll have lots of question and answer time at the end. Please make use of the question and answer box at the bottom, which I will open up after we do our first quiz. And yeah, we'll run through everything, all the question and answers at the end. We'll have lots of time for that. There is a chat box. As I've already mentioned, please do introduce yourself. We love to know who we've got here, what type of dogs, introduce their name, their breed, let us know how old they are, that kind of thing. We love hearing all about them. So let's get started. We're going to start off with a little bit of an interactive quiz. There's just 2 questions. Feel free to pop your answers into the chat box. Don't worry if you don't know the answer or you're a bit unsure. Just pop it in, have a little bit of a guess, and we'll just go with the flow. Okay. So the first one we would love to know about is which of these ear positions can signal that a dog is feeling worried or may give a warning? So I'll just give you a few moments there. So we've got A, B, C, or D. Let us know in the chat box. Perfect. I can see lots of answers coming through. Amazing. There's still lots coming through, so I'm just going to give it another couple of moments. Brilliant. So C. C is actually the answer. So C, we can see this little pooch here. We've got the ears flat. We are quite low posture. We're not feeling quite so keen and quite confident. We're quite low, quite hunch. And we've got quite wide eyes as well. So what we'll call sort of whale eyes. But I won't go too much into it because I know that Lee is going to chat about that next. So let's move on to the next one. Which of these body positions can signal that a dog is feeling anxious? Is it A, B, C, or D? Again, pop your answers into that chat box. Have a guess if you're not sure. Perfect. Lots of answers coming through. Just like what we like to see. Brilliant. And I can see lots mentioning the correct answer there as well. So yeah, B. So we can see here that this little dog has their tail tucked under, their ears are pricked, they're making themselves look bigger, they've got those wide eyes about them as well. So yeah, it could just indicate that they are feeling quite anxious. They're not too sure what is about to sort of happen. Perfect. So moving on, we are just going to do another quick poll before we do get sort of kick-started into the information side. So another sort of little bit of it's not a quiz, more of a poll, see what you guys think. So let's have a little look. So first and foremost, we want to know, how confident do you feel reading your dog's body language? So we're here, we're going to be chatting all about behaviour and our dogs. How confident do you actually feel about it? Obviously it doesn't matter if you're not sure because that's what we're here to do. So that's great. But yeah, let's have a little look, see what you all think. Brilliant. So I've still got some ants coming in, so I'll just give it another couple more minutes. That, well, not minutes, a few moments. We won't make you wait forever. Brilliant. So fantastic. Let's have a little look at those results. So I can see there that lots of you say you've got it nailed. Perfect. You can tell what they're thinking and what to look out for. The majority of you say that you notice big stuff. So the tail wags, the ears, the quite, the stuff that's quite sort of it sticks out to us in a sense, but not really the subtle signs. That's absolutely fine. We're going to go through those as well. And a couple of you are not really sure. You go with your gut feeling, which is also fine. Absolutely fantastic. Brilliant. So next we are going to be moving on to our lovely Leah, and she's going to deep dive into reading our dog's body language.
Thanks, Rachel, and it's lovely to see, so many of you here. So I think it's really important that we run through how we can read your lovely pooches. Lots of them there in the chat that I can see. So I think, first of all, let's get started with the purple image there, just sort of to the left of the screen. So it'd be really nice just if you can pop in the chat how you feel this dog is in sort of the purple images. So what do you think is going on with this dog here? Sort of the few images. So we've got a couple come through. Anxious, nervous, scared. Yep, nervous, frightened. Lovely. Lots of the same sort of stuff coming through there. So you're absolutely right. We've got sort of an anxious, sort of worried, scared little pooch here, and we want to run through sort of the indications of that. So when it comes to sort of anxiousness, we can see sort of yawning. So a really nice big yawn that they're doing there. And we know sort of, dogs can yawn, if they're a little bit tired, if they're a bit sleepy, and it's about reading the other signals that go with it. But it is definitely a sign of nervousness or anxiousness as well. So a big yawn. We can also see in that first image that this little chap is sort of having his tail tucked under. So it's not sort of, wagging, it's not proud. It is really sort of tucked under there, and we've got sort of the ears back, and we've got almost like a hunched body posture there as well. And then we move to sort of image number 2. We can see again this chap is sort of licking sort of the lip area, sort of chomping sort of them lips as well. Now it's important to know, again, just like yawning, we might see sort of lip smacking or licking lips for many reasons. So we can sort of mistake it for health issues sometimes in terms of, if they have got sort of sickness, we might see nausea, that they do smack their lips and they lick their lips. So if your dog has been having a bit of a gurgly tummy, excess wind, sickness or diarrhea, and you are just seeing this around the home, it could be a good indication that we have got an upset. So it's always worthwhile raising it to your vets. But in this situation where we're seeing sort of the yawning, the hunchback behaviour, sort of turning their head to the side as well, not really sort of focusing on the concern in hand, that they are sort of very nervous with this licking as well. We know the action of licking is a comfort stimulus for the brain, so it just gives a little bit of that serotonin, those pheromone releases, to make a dog feel a little bit more comfortable. So sometimes that's why we might see sort of lip licking when they are a little bit on the nervous side. And then in number 3, we can sort of see that this little one is sort of, sitting down, but we're not very in a relaxed position when we're sitting down, sort of one paw's up, the ears are really tucked back, sort of making themselves look a little bit smaller. But the important sort of keynote with this image is that they aren't really sort of looking at sort of, again, what they're supposed to be looking at, or the worry that they are looking at. And usually when they are looking in an opposite direction to what their head is pointing in, we can call that, as Rachel said, whale eye. So it's basically where you can see a lot more of the whites of their eye, and they're looking in a different direction to sort of their head positioning. So all these are really sort of key factors. So some people can get into a habit of, just looking at one thing. Oh, they're licking the lips, it's nervous. It's really important to get to the picture as a whole and look at them as a whole, just with all these 3 demonstrations there. So moving on, we want to look at sort of the red pictures here. So as you probably can see, from this image, this chap is not happy at all. So in image 1, in the red, we can see sort of, that we are standing quite proud, ears are pricked, tails up, and that could mean that we're alert. And exactly like some of you are saying there, sort of fight or flight response. Are they sort of quite confident as well? So it's one of those where, are they happy, are they not? And it's where we have to have a look at other things in conjunction with that. So ears are pricked up, we're trying to stand very tall. An important one with this first picture is this dog's shifting its body weight forward, so it's almost trying to overpower and overstand here. We also can see that the tail is right up in a sort of high position there, again looking taller. I think another keynote is that this dog's hackles are up, so those sort of hackles are there as well. So hackles are really interesting sort of term, for that is piloerection. So just the technical term for having those them hackles up is piloerection, and we can see this when a dog is just not very happy, and again it's just another way for them to sort of stand tall and really stand their ground. And again, it can be mistaken for sort of, confidence, and we might have a happy dog that's quite eager. So it's important that we have a look at the other factors that go with that, like the hackles, like that shift in that body weight. And then we can see in number 2 that this dog's progressed to having that tail right under, sort of lower body stance, the ears are back, and we've got sort of the jowls coming up there. We can see the teeth, they're really on the defense here, and they're really not happy. And it's important to know that it's not always that this dog is aggressive or a really unhappy chap. It can be that this dog is actually a progression from sort of the nervousness. So some personalities might just have the purple image, but some also might have the red image as well. So again, in image 3 on the red, we can see that again it's progressed. So we've had that lowered body stance. Now we're sort of trying to stand a bit taller. Those ears are still back, the teeth are still showing. So we're just a really uncomfortable dog here. So unlike image, the purple images on the left there, they're quite nervous, quite shy. They probably have a bit more of a submissive personality, whereas the red here, yes, we are quite nervous, anxious, but that has then established into a bit more of a dominant role, and this dog is really unhappy with that situation. So in terms of what we want to move on to, so last but not least, sort of this little one at the bottom here in the sort of turquoisey greeny images, what do we think's going on with this dog, from sort of the pricked up ears, the standing? How do we feel this dog is behaving? Happy, playful, very happy, wants to play, attentive, confident? Absolutely, yeah. So you're all spot on. So we are a really happy dog. We can see that we're not sort of shifting our body weight forward. We're not sort of stood tall. We are just sort of sat there, really nice and relaxed. We've got that waggy tail going on. The ears might just be that dog's natural positioning, and we've also got sort of that playful stance as well that we can see there. So just crouching down to the floor, but we've got that wagging of that tail. We can also see in image 3 that this dog is just sort of standing, the tail's not tucked under there, the ears aren't sort of flattened back as well. So we're really quite nice and happy when we're sort of seeing this image as well. Now it's important to know that we might not always have sort of a clear definition when it comes to looking at these images, and that might be down to sort of how a dog is individually. So for example, we might have sort of a working breed that does work, and you might see images like the red number 1 where they're quite keen, but it's also important to read the other signs that we see with that. Also, sometimes we might have a working breed that might have sort of a docked tail, so we can't really judge on sort of tail positioning, so we have to rely on the other sort of traits there that we do see. We might also sort of have a dog that has sort of a docked tail due to sort of an injury, or sort of like a breed that has a coiled tail or may not even have a tail to start with. So we have to sort of look at their sort of eyes, their mouth area, their ears, or sort of just their overall body stance. It's also, you know, looking at sort of breeds like Ridgebacks. We know Ridgebacks have that prominent sort of spinal cord along the top there, which can be easily mistaken for sort of having them hackles up, when we know it's just sort of key to that breed that that's how they do look. And other sort of components as well. You know, if we have had dogs that have been in injuries and have cropped ears for whatever reason, or even our sort of breeds like our French Bulldogs that have naturally sticky up ears, we don't want to be mistaking that for a trait behaviour when it is just into their breed. And to finish off with myself, just a really nice sort of fact is that when we do see dogs rolling onto their back and just showing their belly area, the legs are, you know, up in the air, you know, they're ready to sort of rock and roll. That is basically them feeling quite comfortable with the situation that they're in. They might be naturally a submissive dog, but they're quite happy and content with the situation, and they're showing their vital organs. So in a lot of nervous dogs, they might be less likely to do that because their vital organs in the wild, there could be a risk that they're getting touched. So a happy, nice, confident dog would happily roll onto their back, whereas a nervous one, or, you know, an anxious one, might be a bit less inclined to want to do that. But that's everything from me, and I'm going to hand back over to Rachel.
Thanks, Leah, for all that great information. Before we move on to our next speaker, I think we should have another poll. So this time we would like to know, let's have a little look. When your dog acts naughty, what's your first thought? Is it number one, that they're testing me, they're bored or frustrated, they're trying to tell me something, or honestly, I just feel confused? You don't really know what's happening. So I'll just give another moment for those answers to come in. Can see lots of answers, loving the participation. So keep it up. Brilliant. Fantastic. Lots of answers still rolling in. Just give it another moment. Brilliant. Let's have a little look. So I can see lots of you are saying that they're bored or frustrated, and then lots are saying that they're trying to tell me something. A few of you thinking that they might be testing you, and a few people, honestly, they just you feel confused. You're not really too sure, but that's absolutely fine as well. Perfect. Brilliant. So now I am going to be handing over to Anna, and Anna's going to chat through with us how our dogs communicate and how their guts, sorry, can affect their behaviour as well. So passing over to Anna.
Thank you. And great to have kind of looked into the overall reading our dogs, body language, the kind of importance, and got an idea of where you're all at in terms of kind of confidence and what we would class as like naughty behavior, which is 100% important. Sometimes it's tricky, it's complicated. So we are going to dive in and look at the good, the bad, and the hangry, and really what this means for us in terms of communication. So not all communication is visual. Ultimately, sometimes our dog's behavior can be about the message. So whether it's that kind of zoomies at 10 o'clock at night, or maybe they're refusing breakfast out of the blue, it can be just as important as what they look like. So digging into this kind of why behind behavior can really support dogs meaningfully, but also we're then as owners covering the emotional and the physical support. So hopefully in this section, we'll be leaving you all with the ability to listen with your eyes, lead with empathy, and recognize how maybe food and routine can really shape behavior. So touching on the kind of good first, this is very much, I think, what we all want, which is calm, it's connection. And this is when our dog is relaxed around people, relaxed around other dogs, maybe sleeping well, eating calmly, able to disengage from exciting things. So that ability to kind of switch off, settling independently. One thing to bear in mind is obviously age comes into this. Our little puppies are not going to naturally disengage particularly quickly. They usually crash and burn. And of course, a dog that maybe has had a particular background, whether it's rescue or maybe they have come in from Romania or something, again, it's balancing what their start in life looks like as well. And it's not just about nice behavior. It's also about emotional regulation and things to kind of reflect on. So we want a stable routine, we want consistent sleep, we want to cover their balanced nutrition, and we want a really good, healthy digestion. all of these kind of feed into good behaviour and supporting good behaviour. And a fun fact is over 90% of mood regulating hormones, serotonin, is actually made up for in the gut, not in the brain. So dogs' digestion, health are just as important and really impact mood. And CAM behaviour is really worth reinforcing. So it's not something to expect by default, it's something to reward and to celebrate, regardless of what stage they're at or what age they might be at either. The bad, or we'll call it more the misunderstanding. Unwanted behaviours like barking, chewing, scavenging, as you have all pretty much called out, is rarely about naughtiness and more about maybe the message behind it. So our dogs might be saying to us, actually, I don't understand what you're saying, so I'm going to go off and scavenge, or I'm not entirely sure what you mean, so I'm going to bark, I'm communicating, or my needs are not being met fully, so I'm going to start chewing. My gut feels off, so I'm going to start refusing my food. I'm hungry, I'm uncomfortable. And these will present in lots of different ways, often that come across maybe as a little bit naughty. And I think a really nice point is to dive into a kind of personal experience and story, and that's with my own Labrador. And what I would class as like the rebellious kind of teenager phase, but it wasn't. So Fee is now 2 years old. She's around 14 years in kind of human years. But when she hit her adolescent phase, it was genuinely like a kind of switch flipped. We had what we thought was the perfect routine. We had walks, we had work, we had training, we had enrichment. But almost overnight, out of the blue, she started scavenging constantly. She was kind of snuffling food around the house. She was acting quite hyper-focused at mealtimes, very excitable at mealtimes. She was kind of ignoring simple cues that she'd already kind of nailed for months and was like regressing. So we assumed that she was just regressing, she was pushing boundaries, she was being a teenager. But in reality, we'd kind of missed the cue that she was burning through more calories. She was more hungry. We hadn't made an adjustment outside what was just her norm. So what we thought or had overlooked is she's bred from working stock. Her parents, her lineage are all built for field work, meaning she's naturally got a higher prey drive, stamina, energy, demands, often a lot more so than an average pet. And as she's matured physically, cognitively, everything has grown and developed. Her walks, she's more confident, she's testing boundaries more out and about, even just in herself. Her learning, and ultimately we hadn't kind of moved with her. Once we did, it was like the switch was flicked back on. She settled, she relaxed, she was back learning, she was ticking those boxes. So this wasn't so much about Fee and more what I learned. So it's not always about behaviour. It's sometimes about the actual surroundings, the situation, the actual dog, and looking a little bit closer. And a fun behaviour fact is working dog breeds, even in pet homes, often retain traits that are bred for. So this might be a desire to forage, problem solve, stay busy, and they need mental stimulation to keep that going, but they also need a real adequate fuel just to keep going. And the hangry. So food affects mood. You've probably heard the saying, hangry in humans, but it also applies to dogs. So this might be a sign that your dog is maybe struggling with food or has a food-related stress, such as guarding their bowl, rushing meals, refusing food altogether. It could be begging, scavenging, stealing. It could be hyperactivity before mealtimes or maybe pacing. It might be difficulty settling, particularly in the evening. This starts to kind of appear. And often these behaviours are traced back to changes in routines with food, inadequate calories, nutrients, or even the poor quality of the food that's being fed. So a key nutritional insight is tryptophan, which is found in really key proteins like chicken, turkey. It's phenomenal at making serotonin, and serotonin is a kind of calming chemical, but it's also phenomenal at boosting this kind of happy feeling. Dogs that are on a low quality, low protein diet will often struggle with kind of impulse control, and they can become a little reactive with it. The other side of it is blood sugar crashes. So from heavy processed or high carb foods, we can see kind of energy dips and even restlessness. And a key call out is fermentable fibers. So sweet potato, carrots, just as a couple of examples, these ultimately feed the good bacteria. They produce short chain fatty acids. This reduces inflammation on the guts and supports that real kind of brain function. But in terms of nutrition, we can feed healthy, we can pick something supportive, we can keep routine. It's often the little things too. So picking something that's gently cooked, it's easy to digest, it's removing stress and supporting mood stability. Picking like balanced protein sources. So again, we're boosting tryptophan, we're supporting those amino acids, we're feeding the brain and the body. Natural fiber sources, so actually picking real veg. You can bring these in as snacks as well as mealtimes. Tailored portions. So a little bit like me, a Butternut, we can make a phenomenal recommendation in terms of activity, snacks, the kind of stage of your dog. Sometimes metabolism can beat us a little bit, and we need to make that adjustment. We need to read our dogs and understand them from a health and a behaviour side. And predictable feeding routines. Dogs love routine. It creates safety, it reduces anxieties, it really builds in a really simple structure which dogs thrive on. So the kind of key takeaways for here is behaviour is always about communication. So if something changes, maybe next time we're not going to ask, how do I fix this? And we stop and say, what are they trying to tell me? What am I missing? What am I trying to support? So supporting behaviour isn't just about training, it's about feeding too. And we want to feed for focus, feed for calmness and that connection. And remember, a happy gut is definitely a happy dog too. But hopefully there's some little takeaways there. I am going to pass you back to Rachel, I think for another poll.
Perfect. Thanks, Anna. So yeah, lots of different information there that we can all take away, and hopefully you've learnt something new. So yeah, brilliant. Before we hand over to Lucy, we're going to have another quick poll. So this time, it is more sort of food based. So let's have a little look. How would you describe your dog's mealtime behaviour? Are they super excited that they'd actually eat the bowl? I know my two would. Calm and consistent? Are they picky or fussy? Are they guarded, tense, or unpredictable? Let's see what your dogs are like on their meal times. So again, I'll just give you a few moments there to get your answers in. Lots of them coming through. Perfect. Brilliant. So quite even actually with the answers this time. So let's have a little look. So I can see that lots of pooches out there get super excited that they'd practically eat the ball, which is absolutely fantastic. That's what we like to see. We've also got some cool cucumbers out there as well with a calm and consistent, but we also have some of those picky or fussy eaters too, and we do have a couple of guarded, tense or unpredictable dogs as well. So quite a mixed range there, but lots of super excited dogs, which is really, really great. Perfect. So now we are going to move on to our last speaker, who is our lovely Lucy, and she's going to talk to us about all things emotion and social cues in our pooches.
Thank you, Rachel. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all. So yeah, as Anna and Leah have explored so far, we know our dogs are constantly communicating with us. Yes, they don't do it with words, but they use subtle cues in their body language. And they can tell us when they're relaxed, when they're curious, and just as importantly, when they're feeling a little unsure or overwhelmed. And we are going to be looking at recognizing those moments, particularly in social situations, and responding in a way that builds trust and not tension with our pups. And when we begin to understand how our dogs perceive interactions with humans, children, and also other animals, we then start to unlock the ability to make them feel safe and supported. So first up, what are social cues? So we know our dogs are social animals, and while they can't use words, they're constantly communicating through body language, facial expressions, vocalizations, and even behavioral signs. And paying attention to these signals, we can then start to understand what our dogs are trying to tell us in different situations. So again, they could be feeling curious and social, or they may be in need of a little bit of space. And we want to be able to tell if they are asking for a play session, or they might be politely saying no thank you. And recognizing the difference between these two is essential for preventing stress. So if we look a little bit more detail of the I need space versus the I want to play. So as Leah mentioned as well, with our playful dogs, they tend to show a loose, relaxed posture. They may play bow, so this is where their front legs are down and their tail is up wagging. Their mouths are open, relaxed faces, and softer eyes. And typically, we find their tails are wagging in wide, sweeping motions. Now, in contrast to this, a dog who may be saying, I need some space, may turn their head away. Again, as Leah mentioned, they may yawn or lick their lips without context. They may be avoiding eye contact, show a tucked or rigid tail, and they may move away physically, or they may freeze on the spot. Now, these signals may be subtle, but they're definitely not insignificant. And when we miss or ignore these signs, especially when they're repeated, we are at risk of teaching our dogs that subtle communication doesn't work. And this is when we can start to see those behaviors creep in, such as barking. Now, the strongest bonds with our dogs aren't just built through training, but they're built through everyday moments when we listen to them. And this kind of trust is especially important for our dogs who are a little bit more anxious or reactive. And when these signals are missed, it can lead to stress or overwhelm or behaviors that look like aggression, but they can often just be fear in disguise. So context really matters when it comes to how dogs behave. For example, around children, even the most patient dog can feel unsure. Kids can be loud, fast moving, especially my kids, and they don't always understand personal space. Again, my kids, which can be a lot for dogs to process. So a dog who seems to tolerate it might be feeling a little bit stressed underneath. And the same goes for interactions with strangers. Not every dog wants to be patted or approached, and a wagging tail doesn't always mean they're comfortable. It can just as easily signal uncertainty. And when dogs greet each other, the politest interactions are typically relaxed, indirect, and calm. A direct, intense approach, even with good intentions, can come across as overwhelming. And the more we understand these subtle signs, the better we can support our dogs and help prevent those uncomfortable moments before they even happen. We're going to now dive into the idea of the emotional sink. It's a simple but powerful way to understand how dogs manage, or struggle to manage their emotional load. So if you imagine that your dog has a sink inside of them, everything they experience on a day-to-day, big or small, will feed into this sink. So if we imagine we've got different taps, so you've got your negative tap. So this could be, for our anxious dogs with a loud sound, for dogs that don't like being left home alone, unexpected dog encounters, unfamiliar people. This will feed down in one tap. And then you've got your positive tap. So, the excitement from playtime, greeting visitors, going for walks, these will also fill into the sink. So even good things can be emotionally taxing for our dogs, especially if they come one after another. You've also got what we call the mixer tap. So just like a real mixer tap blends hot and cold water together, emotional conflict happens when positive and negative emotions are flowing at the same time. A good example of this could be you've got your dog happy to go outside. They know it's walk time. So we know that's a positive emotion, but then they may be anxious about being on the lead if they're not fully sort of lead trained, and that could be a negative. And over the day, as these experiences trickle in to the sink, that it starts to fill up. And when the sink fills up, we need to drain the sink to allow for more experiences to trickle in. And this is how dogs let off steam and regulate their emotions. The drain works best when your dog gets, first of all, rest and sleep. So we know sleep is very important, and the time of sleep can change depending on the dog's age. As a rule of thumb, puppies need between 18 to 20 hours of sleep per day. This will, however, change depending on the puppy's age. We know that our younger pups, they need more sleep. And adult dogs typically need 12 to 14 hours of sleep to let their bodies recharge, reset, and that sink to drain for the next day. Chewing, whether it's long-lasting chews or a stuffed toy or even a gentle gnaw on something safe. The act of chewing helps dogs to self-soothe. It engages their body in a calming, repetitive motion that can lower stress levels and encourage relaxation. But if the drain is clogged or the sink is overflowing, maybe because your dog hasn't had the time to recover from earlier experiences, the sink can start to fill faster than what it can empty. And then comes the overflow. That's when your dog might suddenly bark at another dog, growl at a family member, refuse to go on a walk, or maybe just shut down entirely. It might seem like the reaction came out of nowhere, but it may be a result that the sink has been filling quietly all day without adequate rest to allow the sink to drain. And understanding this changes the question from why did they react like that to what's been dripping in the sink today. Has there been quite a few positive and negative experiences without having that time to allow the sink to drain? By thinking in terms of the emotional sink, we can this way support our dogs better. Because just like us, dogs need space to process their day, and a little understanding goes a long way. To round up, having a better understanding of body language is more than just preventing problems. It's about deepening the bond that we share with our dogs and also building that trust. And I'm going to pass back to Rachel.
Thank you, Lucy. So that has actually come to the end of our speakers. So it is time now for the question answer session. But first of all, I do want to say thank you to Leah, Lucy and Anna for all that great information. We hope you have all learned something new and got some tips and tricks there as well. So let's see what questions we have got coming in. I could see some coming through whilst the girls were speaking. Feel free to pop any questions you do have into the question answer box that's at the bottom there, and we'll get round to answering those. Perfect. So let's have a little look, see what's come up first. Brilliant. So Charlotte is asking about meals. So how many meals a day do you think a dog tends to prefer? Is it 1, 2, or 3? What do you think's best? So we break our dog's intake down into 2 meals, but he always seems quite hungry. Anna, would you help Charlotte here?
Yeah, definitely. So it's a great question. I think completely open and honest. Having spent a long time in practice, I was always a bit of an advocate for 2 meals a day. You build a nice routine, it gives you kind of structure, you can then carry on your day in and around. But what we actually know more now, and as we are kind of developing, is each dog is very different. We have some dogs that for lifestyle reasons have 1 meal and do very well. We have other dogs that have 2 meals, and that again fits in maybe from a kind of structure or routine, but even in their kind of hunger levels. But for some dogs, 3 meals works well. And one, it kind of depends on your lifestyle and if you can even accommodate 3 meals a day. But it also depends on your dog. You might have a dog that is super food driven and really leans into enjoying that kind of routine, looks forward to meal times, in which case it's super exciting. Or you might have the dog that maybe a big bowl of food in the morning and at night is enough to just put them off. So I think if you're finding they're particularly hungry, I would definitely play about with it. Because although you're going to be overall feeding the same amount of food through the day, by breaking it into 3 as a trial, you're potentially just giving one the guts a little bit more to work on, and you're almost kind of giving your dog just that extended routine of thinking I'm getting fed again. And it can be a mental thing as much as it is a kind of normal routine thing. So I would definitely say play about with it, trial feeding more. And the other thing to look into is depending on what you're feeding, if it's 100% butternut or a combination, potentially maybe leaning into the kind of higher calorie meals if your dog's particularly hungry. There is the kind of higher in fat and the kind of richer ones. Sometimes that can help. But again, we're here and always happy to pick it up if it helps to dive into things just a little bit more personally.
Perfect. Thanks, Anna, for that. I can see quite a few questions coming through that are quite sort of personal to their dogs. So, for example, how much of the dog eat, that kind of thing. If you do want any sort of information on more sort of personal answers, then do feel free to email us at the end. We're going to be giving over the email address and everything. So do feel free to get in touch with us. Then we can, deep dive it into your question more personally if needs be. Perfect. So next up, I have got a little dog with arthritis. So Yvonne is asking, my dog is going on 11. She has arthritis. Is there anything in her food that can help her? Leah, would you help with Yvonne, please?
Absolutely. I love our more advanced little poochies, bless them, or they might have a little bit of arthritis as a bit younger. So, when it comes to sort of arthritis, it's about looking at it as a whole and lots of different tips and tricks that we can use. Essentially, it's about sort of tailoring lifestyle as well as sort of things that we can pop in food. So looking at how are they managing on walks? Do we need sort of shorter, more frequent walks rather than a longer stint that can just put a little bit of pressure on those joints? Along with that, we do know sort of fatty acids, sort of omegas are really good for sort of joint health. So particularly our salmon recipe does have a really nice level of sort of those omegas. Equally, all our other recipes do, but we do know marine sources of omegas can be quite nice when it comes to joint health as well. We've also got sort of our lamb recipe that does have sort of the turmeric in there as well, which we know is a really nice anti-inflammatory property. So having a look at those ones, and then if you've not sort of seen it, sort of looking at adding something like a supplement as they do get a little bit more advanced, with sort of our fish oil can be popped in meals as well. If they do have any sensitive tummies, we just say to give sort of a half dose, just to sort of see how they get on with the tummies first initially, just to see how they get on. But that's something that you can pop in food just for a little bit of support there as well. But if you want a little bit more of a sort of a tailored support, feel free to sort of book in a call, which Rachel will say afterwards how you can do that, and we can go through sort of arthritis and other things that you can do to sort of support them as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Leah. So we've got Helen here who has 2 chihuahuas and they both eat poo, mainly the puppy, but what might cause this? This seems to be a question that we get asked quite a bit actually in regards to poo. So I just thought it's a really great one to address. So Lucy, are you happy to give some advice and tips and tricks here for Helen?
Yeah, absolutely. And exactly as Rachel said, it's a very common question that we get a lot. And I also saw there was one about grass as well, which may link in. So there's lots of reasons, and you know, ranging from boredom, is it anxiety, stress, and also it could be a little bit of instinct. Their mothers do it when they're little. You mentioned the puppy does it more. Is it just copying those behaviors from when they were with mum? However, it could also lead to because of attention seeking. Typically we say no when they do it, and it can lead them to do it more because they're getting that attention. It's worth noting, is pup, showing signs of hunger. All of butternut meals are complete and balanced, so you don't need to worry if they're lacking anything from the meals. However, it may just be worth to rule out, if pup is showing signs of hunger, so constantly looking for more food after meal times, not content at all, it may be worth adding some more food. We can definitely help with portions, so Rachel will explain, but you can always reach out to us after and we can sort of take a little bit of a deeper look. But as well, it is just sort of letting them know and redirecting that behavior. So if that's picking the poo up instantly, I completely understand. It's not that simple because they go and within seconds, it's gone. So, but really just directing that behavior away. And when both of them are doing it, I completely understand it does make it harder. But definitely feel free to reach out and we can have a little bit of a deeper dive afterwards.
Thanks, Lucy. So I've got quite a few coming in actually of dogs picking things up, eating grass. We've got one that likes to eat greenery, rabbit poo when they're out and about, eating plants in the garden, insects. I've got one that likes to eat the soil. Anna, can you give some insight into these doggos that are eating at anything and everything when they're out and about?
Um, hopefully maybe a little snippet, but also I'm completely there with you in the fact there is a large portion of this that is normal. Obviously, we don't want them picking up things that are potentially dangerous or risky or toxic, and there's a very thin line. Ultimately, we would love it if they don't touch anything. We want them to go for a walk right beside us, have a nice kind of run around, a bit of a frolic, and leave it at that. But for every dog, whether they are in that midst of puppyhood or heading into senior, they are always going to try and put something in their mouths. They might grow out of it, but they're going to try it, whether it's grass, which can often be super supportive of nutrition. They're like digestion. So they'll take it on one because it tastes nice, but also because it does aid digestion. They can eat it if they're feeling nauseous. But in most cases, grass is nice. It aids, it helps poops. And then there's obviously the snuffling of the rabbit poos, the snatching of the sandwich they found in the park. And the key thing here is to, one, cut yourself a little bit of slack, particularly if they're young or a rescue, because you are battling quite a natural thing to do, and it will get better. And the other side of it is to really potentially at home or in a safe space. We found like a dog park where you can actually kind of hire it out is fantastic. And getting together with a nice group of other dogs can really kind of test the boundaries. But this is a really good chance to work on that leave it or particular command. So you want to have something really high end reward. I've done it myself. I think I ended up using a tube of squirty cheese. And it is now a focal point that she knows if it comes out, this means you stay close and this is a good experience. And it doesn't always go right, but having something really high reward that's going to distract them. It could be something like squeezy cheese. It could be something like leaning into clicker training. It's something to kind of flick that switch and get them off wanting to snatch, to grab. So if they've picked it up, you're ready with your distraction. It's your squirty cheese. If they are thinking about doing that runner to the park that's filled with the rabbit poo, then you're armed with, say, that high-end ball or whistle, or potentially maybe that clicker training you've been leaning into. One of the best tips I ever got when we were at puppy class was actually to also watch the pitch of your voice. So naturally, when our dogs are taking off maybe to chase the deer or frolic with the dog halfway across the field, we want to go into a panic. We want to start screeching and calling their name again and again and again. The key in these situations is to remain calm, is to use one clear command. Initially, it might be their name, followed by what you actually want them to do, which is come back or leave it. But also watch the pitch. So what I found really helped us was I would get slightly anxious and it would become a little bit deep and sketchy. The best thing I ever did was actually go quite nice and hyper, almost like I was super excited. It was more exciting to be with me. And it kind of leads into being able to, again, act as that distraction, follow up with a high reward treat. I've thrown lots at you all, but hopefully there's something in there that maybe mixes, whether it's the grass or something, and you can catch us if you need further support.
Thank you so much, Anna. You went into real deep there with it all. So yeah, hopefully that's helped quite a few people out, because as I say, I did notice a lot of the questions coming through had the same sort of topic or around them. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much, Anna. Next one I have in line is, can dogs get bored of the same food every day? We are wondering if that's why our dog is fussy, picky eater. There are some days she doesn't eat her meal for a few days, but she will never say no to treats. Now, we do have a fussy queen on our team, and I think this is the perfect question for her. So, Leah, there is a couple as well of questions in there, well, that have come through in regards to fussy eating. So, do you want to just give a sort of an overview on fussy eating and how you can sort of help Anika out here with her fussy dog?
Absolutely. So I will give a whistle-stop tour on our picky or fussy eaters. Essentially, there is no sort of clean-cut answer. But I think initially we want to know why they are picky or fussy. So just to give an overview, In terms of a couple of those reasons, we can see dogs going off their food essentially if they have got a health condition, and it can always sometimes be a little bit, complicated to understand what is that cause. So if we ever have got little ones going off their food, they're not wanting to eat, but we are seeing other changes in behaviour, that like they're not wanting to walk as much, we've got sort of panting, shaking, we've had any sort of sickness or diarrhea, or even an increase in thirst and sort of urination, then that's always the time to sort of highlight it to the vet if you have seen any of those symptoms, because it might not be so much a fussy behaviour, but sort of an underlying condition there. Other reasons can be that we see quite commonly is one called habituation, which is boredom associated with food. So we see this quite a lot in our puppies that have high energy drives, but also in particular breeds that are quite clever or are sort of working breeds as well. So it might be that you do sort of try a new food, and for the first couple of days you think, great, I've cracked it, brilliant, and then as the days go on, they go off this recipe and that recipe, and then you're kind of back at square one again. So in that sense, it's really important to keep things new and interested if your dog is like this, by using sort of different techniques like moving to a different area of the house to feed. Sometimes dogs do like this level of comfort, like popping a little mat, sort of carpet mat under their bowl for that comfort if they do pick up food and take it to a rug. And then looking at different things to feed out of, especially for our younger dogs, they do like a play drive around food. So spreading across a licky mat, popping in a Kong bowl, using those snuffle mats and chopping Butternut up and popping it in a snuffle mat there, just so that there's that reward and praise, so that food isn't more so a chore. And then just alternating recipes, so there's nothing stopping us from sort of get a couple of pouches in the fridge and using sort of one recipe one meal, one recipe the next as well. Some dogs do get what we call learned behaviours, so preferences towards food. So just as you were saying that, not so inclined to want to eat sort of meals, but liking sort of chews, treats, things like that, they do develop this preference, and it can be as a result of boredom. So again, it's about that change up, but also trying to avoid things like hand feeding or mixing foods into a meal, because this can sort of stem those learned behaviours, but instead popping food down for 20 minutes, letting them have a go, whether it's a different area, different thing to feed out of. And then if they do eat within that 20 minutes, make a massive song and dance about it. Well done, lots of praise, lots of reward, and then give that treat. So it kind of, changes that mind frame of, okay, if I hold out, I might get something else, but if I do eat, look at all this praise, attention, reward I've got, and it kind of cements that positive relationship with food, which is what we want as well. So a couple of reasons there, hopefully sort of changing textures, having that play, things to eat out of in different areas can help. Interestingly, what I've found when I do support people with their dogs that are fussy, they do like to eat off a flatter surface. So things like an old chopping board or baking tray can also come in handy. But I hope that helps.
Thank you very, very much there, Leah. As I say, Leah is one of our fussy queens. So if you do ever want some more information in regards to fussy eating, or you want, some personal support, then do feel free to book in. And as I say, we will go through that at the end anyways, how to contact us and get in touch. I think we have time just for one more. I've seen one come in regard to teeth cleaning, and it's such a difficult ask from the vet. So Lucy, do you have any tips and tricks on helping to get dogs familiar with sort of teeth cleaning and dental health and that kind of things?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think definitely it's a big one. Maybe one that we forget a little bit, or, we don't think is necessarily going to be an issue. But exactly the same with us. We clean our teeth twice a day. We should be following these rules for our dogs too, once a day if we can. Now, it's really easy for me to sit here and say, clean your dog's teeth once a day. But if your dog doesn't like having their teeth brushed, there's definitely steps you can do beforehand to build up that trust, and let them know. We just essentially want to let them know that it's okay. Because you can imagine if someone came to us with a toothbrush and we had no idea what they were going to do, but they tried to put it in our mouths, we would be, whoa, you know. So it's exactly the same for our dogs. So you can start off, if you've got a toothbrush, great, just leaving it around, introducing it. Obviously, we don't want them to start chewing it, so supervision, but, introduce it to your dog. Now, you don't have to put it in their mouth, but just let them know what it is, let them have a sniff, and then you can do that for a couple of days. And then what you can do, if you've got some toothpaste, put some on your finger and either let them lick it off your finger or pop it on their gums. You don't need to spread it in, and they will then lick. So the licking motion, it will get around their teeth. And we just really want to let them know that what we're doing is normal, and it will take a little bit of time. It's not going to be they're going to open their mouth and let you brush their teeth, but it's just about over time, you know, that desensitization, letting them know it's okay, and you can build up and then eventually have toothpaste on the toothbrush and clean their teeth. But there's also other products you can use. You know, if they really won't let you, there's a product called the Aquadent, which you can put in the water. You know, there's lots of different products out there, but just making sure that they're safe for your dogs.
Perfect, thanks, Lucy. Yeah, another one. Yeah, there's all sorts of different ones. Obviously, there's the dental sticks and things as well that you can sort of add it into their daily treats and things that can sort of help too, and plaque off and bits and bobs too. So yeah, brilliant, fantastic. I can see quite a lot of questions come through that are quite sort of like personal to their dogs. So as we say, if you want us to answer those on a more personal level, then do get in touch with us at the end. So unfortunately, that is all the time, you know, that we've got sort of for the question answers. We do hope that you found our session useful and you've learned something new. If we did not get around to answering your questions, and as I said, there was quite a lot of personal questions in there, then do feel free to send them to our email at vetnurses@butternutbox.com, and we'll be sure to get back to you with an answer. We also have our Butternut page on Facebook, and that's called For the Love of Dogs. So be sure to join the page and become part of our community, where we are around to always help as well. Don't forget, you can also book appointments through your app or online account, and these are all free of charge. These will be with one of us here today. We cover all sorts of topics, whether that is allergies, fussy eating, portions, weight questions, anything and everything that you can think of, we can help and support you with. If anyone would like help from a qualified behaviouralist, then do feel free to jot down the links here at the bottom. If one of the girls could pop it into the comments, that would be great. So yeah, there's the APBC website, which is the Association of Pet Behavioural Councils. Here you'll find like a list of all the registered qualified canine behaviourists. So if you are having a problem behaviour-wise with your pooches, I would advise popping onto there and getting in touch with one of those qualified behaviourists who'll be able to help and give personal support for your dogs as well. There is also, I've popped on there, the Dogs Trust have a behaviour line as well. So do feel free to use them as well. I understand that this is a free service too. So yeah, the links are getting popped into the comments there. So do feel free, if you are wanting to speak to a behaviouralist, then these guys are there to support you too. So do reach out to them. Perfect. So from myself, Anna, Leah and Lucy, we'd like to say a huge thank you for you all joining us today for our presentation, and we hope you all have a great afternoon. Take care, guys.